Hello, friends. This is Debo Jyoti, and welcome to a new episode of my channel. And today we have a very special guest with us. She is a very well known Cuban actress, both on screen and on theater. And she, along with her partner, made one of the best dystopian sci fi films slash social satire that I came across recently, and that was Blue Heart. Thank you so much, Lynn, for doing this video. And I have to tell you, people's life are censored. I tried StreamYard, didn't work. I tried all the other things, Skype, Instagram video call, WhatsApp video call. I tried everything is geo blocked in Cuba. Outside of the country, it's impossible to communicate. If you live outside Cuba and if you want to communicate a Cuban who is living inside Cuba, it's impossible practically. So what we are doing is, and this is like the beautiful Indian mythology of Jugaad, of we will be sending WhatsApp videos as questions and as answers, and I'll be stitching together and create a Frankenstein monster out of it. So this is going to be, I don't think anyone has ever taken an interview like this. I will be asking questions, Lynn, on Instagram through WhatsApp videos, and she will be replying me back again through WhatsApp videos, and I'll be stitching together. So once again, Lynn, thank you so much for doing this. And Lynn, yes, since we talked about Cuba and Cuban like censorship and Cuban like how the censorship and how politics affects people, how was like growing up in Cuba? How was like growing up in Cuba? I think you probably grew up in 80s and 90s. So how was life like in Cuba, and how did you come into acting? Was you always interested in acting, or was it something that you picked up later? So yes, Lynn, please go ahead.
Hello, Diva Jyoti from Havana, Cuba. Thanks for the invitation. My English is not perfect, so I'll do my best. It's true, it's pretty hard to get internet access in Cuba, especially when you are trying to do videos online. And I think we can start. The first question and first answer. You were asking me about the meaning of growing up in Cuba. Since I was a teenager when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, at that time I had this struggle because my childhood was during the time that Cuba was like a province from the Soviet Union. It was a bubble, and then we were part of the second world. It was the communism area, and then war disappeared, and Cuba, since it's an island in the other side of the ocean, and we were there, and Fidel Castro used to say that we still were defending the ideas of the Cuban Revolution, and then it was this terrible economical crisis, and there were no food, no clothes, no shoes, nothing. And then all these values from the revolution, from my childhood, gradually were disappearing. And as an artist, how can you deal with these struggles? Because you are supposed that you are sensitive, that you are there as a witness, as a writing the testimonies of your time, and yeah, I had to make a lot of theater plays about these subject matters, and I hope now with Chronicles of the Absurd, because I'm also produce independent cinema with Miguel Coyula, is also my partner, and we work together. We were filming, for example, Blue Heart, Corazón Azul, for 10 years. And Chronicles of the Absurd, our last film, it got the world premiere at ITFA, at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam, and we are very happy because we won one of the main awards there at the Beachon competition for best film. And in a way, Chronicles of the Absurd, as if we need to close a period where we were talking about all this experience in different formats. And Chronicles of the Absurd, it's pretty much a dark love story, and also it's the making of Corazón Azul. And yes, I think it was hard, especially because nobody wants to hear about communism anymore, because it's supposed that communism, it doesn't exist because the Soviet Union disappeared. But as Cubans, what we can do with this, with all of these problems with our own society, with our own experience.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing that with us. And yes, Lynn, so the way we connected on Instagram was I watched your film Blue Heart and I really loved it. So how did you guys created a movie like Blue Heart? Because apart from being a dystopian science fiction film, it's a very strong political commentary. It's a social commentary as well, and Cuban government as well as Cuban people as well. So how difficult was it? We obviously had these conversations before. How difficult it was for you and your partner to make a movie like Blue Heart, and especially because of its explicit political statement, not to mention its explicit graphic scenes which you guys have put in obviously as a statements against Cuban censorship. So how difficult was to make a movie like Blue Heart? And I want to tell you this, I have told this before, this is well off camera, that I absolutely love the film Blue Heart, and I'm happy that it exists. So you guys did a great job. It's your baby without a doubt. So please tell me how you and Miguel made a movie like Blue Heart in this Cuban environment, this political environment.
Well, in the moment when Miguel Coyula, the director, wrote the synopsis, he got in troubles because with censorship. I mean, because of political reasons. The synopsis of Blue Heart is an experiment that Fidel Castro did in his latest years to build the new man for his utopian society. This experiment went wrong, otherwise it wouldn't be drama, and all these individuals, genetically manipulated, are very intelligent but also cruel, and they create a band, an anarchist band, to destroy the system created them. It is impossible to get funds for this film or budget, not just in Cuba, in the rest of the world. We were trying for the first year to get funds for this film. At the end, we had to finance the film with our own pocket, and this is something that is a big challenge, because this means that your film is gonna have logos and you are completely alone. And then we accept this, the first struggle, no, the biggest struggle with the production. And then when you finish the film, what do you do? Because you need to do the exhibition, you need the premiere. And this was we are very lucky because Miguel had the experience with his previous film in the same way, and he was prepared for what we had to deal. But it was important because it is what I was explaining and the first question, because we are what we are, and we cannot be separated of our own memories of our childhood, and I feel lucky because we could do Blue Heart in these conditions, in these strange conditions, like a real film. And yeah, Corazón Azul Blue Heart was censored not just because the film was not screening either in Miami or Havana, but was censored in Morocco, in Belarus, because of the sex scenes. At the end, we realized that the film were touching them in different subject matters that was pretty much Morocco and Belarus, like Cuba. But of course, they say that was because of the sex scene, and we cannot prove that was not the truth. But we have the same system here, and we can imagine that something happened also because of political reasons. And yes, it's I wrote a book, but it's just in Spanish, Crónica Azul, Blue Chronics, and it's about all these struggles we had during the production of this film for these 10 years with the actors, because a lot of actors abandoned the film because they had fear to be in the film, and yes, at the same time we have Chronicles of the Absurd. Otherwise, this film didn't exist. And yes, of course, we didn't know that we were doing a lot of films together, not just Chronicles of the Absurd or Blue Heart. Also, Nadie and Nobody is a documentary about Alcides, a Cuban dissident, a poet, and he passed away in 2018, and the film got the world premiere in 2017.
Thank you, Lynn, for sharing this. And I had no idea that the initial protest scene was a real protest. Man, 10 years in the making, 10 years of your life were given to a film. And the movie, again, I have told you many times this. I absolutely love the film, how well it turned out, and how strong the political statements were. And one thing I would really like to know is the graphic sex scenes. Once again, it's something that we have discussed off camera as well, but how difficult was it to do the graphic sense in both the performance aspect of it and the political aspect of it, given it was against the censorship? Had you done scenes like this before? Had you done sex scenes like this before? And how difficult was it to shoot both as a performance and as a political statement?
Sure, I used to do sex scenes or erotic scenes in short films. Also, in I got my first principal role in 2010 in Distance, Larga Distancia. It's on YouTube, by the way. It's online. And this film, I had erotic scenes, but not explicit scenes like Blue Heart. For sure, Blue Heart is the biggest challenge I had as an actress in a film. Because it's what you were saying. It's because of all this the way that Miguel create the scene is a challenge for everybody, for every single actor. I think it's because we are a couple and we were two people on the set, three people with Carlos Javier, and that's why it was easier, because sometimes we used to be at least 10 people on the set, but for three it's nothing. And then you forget that you are doing a film or a scene for the rest of the population you are just thinking about what is good for the scene, what I need as an actress, or him as a director, or everything, no? And then, of course, when you do the exhibition of the film, yeah, you are conscious again that it's not for you anymore. But yeah, this is something what we have to deal with as an actor, of course. And we have to be prepared. You have to choose if I'm allowed to do this or not. But in the moment when you say yes, you need to get the best for the film, is what I think.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing this. And since you guys mentioned that the Cuban way of living, especially its political influence on people, what is the Cuban cinema ecosystem like? Because the movie ecosystems vary from place to place. In India, the movie system, and there are like 20 different film industries in India, and all operate in a certain way. How is the Cuban film like ecosystem, like financially speaking, and how difficult it is to make an independent film in Cuba? Because again, Cuba is a country we do not know much about as from a cinema. Not very little of it comes out internationally. So how difficult it is to make a movie like Blue Heart, and the censorship part of it. It was very graphically nude. The nude scenes made a statement. The political statements were very strongly visible, and you guys gave 10 years of your lives, and hats off to you. So how difficult it is. And I'll ask you a frank question: did a movie like this in a country like Cuba, where there is that much of censorship and that much of political interference on human life, on daily human life, did you guys face any consequences because of that? I know it's not a like I just asked you the direct question: did you guys face any backlash of any kind by making a movie like this in a state that is like as bureaucratic as Cuba?
Yeah, it was in a way we were talking about censorship, and what Miguel says about if you are independent, it's not just because you are financing your films with your own pockets. You have to be independent in content and in the way you use the camera. because it's not just the number of pixels, it's the way you film. And these ideas are very appealing because we live under this authoritarian system, but at the same time, we can feel that the government needs to change because the situation is terrible, and we are stuck. But we have this gray area when we can exist and we can take advances of this situation because we are not magicians. We exist because there is a possibility to exist here in this strange way, and we learn to survive in this way. That's why we can do these films. Of course, you need to renounce to a normal life. You need to choose if you want to do films or you want to go to a restaurant or you want to consume. And yeah, we live like a monk here in Havana, working in our house, in our place, and trying to do what we want to do. What we want to do is to express ourselves through the arts, through the cinema, through the theaters, through the literature. And I try to not think about it, about censorship or about this totalitarian system or authoritarian system called Cuban Revolution. I try to be honest with myself at this moment, and yeah, that's it. Of course, I know that there's gonna be consequences, and there's gonna be we got the consequences already, and that's why Chronicles of the Absurd exist. But yes, we transform the painful and the violent of the state in art. And yeah, it is what we try to do. I cannot explain why I'm in this way or why Miguel is been doing these films in this way. Maybe we are part of these romantic ideas of the beginning of the Cuban Revolution with the filmmakers from the 60s at the ICAIC, the Cuban film industry, that they were allowed to do films at that moment because there were a lot of budget and they have not completely freedom, but they could talk about this different subject matter that was uncomfortable for Fidel Castro at the time, and yes, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, Lynn, so obviously we have talked about this many times, and I told you, right? I told you on Instagram that I will make a thumbnail that makes a statement. It would be a suggestive thumbnail, it would be explicit in nature, but it something that makes a statement. And yes, Lynn, absolutely, obviously with the political pressures and everything, the end product turned out so good. And Lynn, I told you this like a million times, your English is perfectly fine. I'm not a English first language speaker myself. I am a Bengali is my mother language, so I can understand every single thing you say. So don't worry. So how difficult was the filming process of it? You have obviously done nudity in films as well as other forms of art. You have wear many hats as a writer, as a model, as a cinematographer. You have done stage theater. You obviously think you fancy yourself more as a stage actor than a film actor. So how difficult was it to do a nude scene like that? Because the
Yeah, I remember we were talking about it when you were sending me a message by Instagram at the beginning of this conversation, and I can talk a little more about the sex scene because it's true. It has graphic sex and was the biggest challenge for me as an actress because I was also producer, assistant director, art director, costume designer, and sometimes I talk about the production process and I forgot that the protagonist. My character in Blue Heart is Elena. It's looking for the origins of her genes, and she has more questions and more humanity than the rest of the characters. And what happened in this scene when we were filming, it took 3 months because of the cinematography. What Miguel was trying to do was there were a lot of shots and a lot of tapes of every single shot, and this was a nightmare at the end because, for example, I remember a moment when I was strangling David. Carlos Javier is the name of the actor. I was strangling him, and it was for too many times, and repetition. And then when Miguel says, "I got it," I was under the table where the camera was up. And then Miguel said, "Well, we got it." And I was asking Carlos Javier if he wanted to have dinner because it was part of the production. And he was completely out of himself. And he said, "No, please, I want to have dinner at home. I prefer that." I can't believe that I finished this scene because I was having dreams or nightmares since I was 15 and he was in his 20s because he got the script play when he was a teenager. And I said, "Oh my God, Miguel, you traumatized this boy," because we have no idea what we were doing. But yes, it was, the choreography was very, I have not the word in English, but we had to do this strict choreography all the time, and sometimes because we were just two people in the crew, Miguel and I, and Carlos Javier as an actor, I had to hold the light during the scene because it's supposed that it was in night. Because we used, most of the film was filming with natural lights. Just a couple of things of scenes were with artificial lights, and one of them was the sex scene. And yes, it was the biggest challenge. At the end, I was exhausting, and then I spent 10 years filming Blue Heart, playing Elena, and this does not mean that that the time passed. And it's supposed that Elena was getting older. No, I had to pretend that it was the same day, and I spent a month and a whole year with the same dress and the same hair and the same makeup, everything. And I said, "Yeah, my God, I need to stop doing this." But at the end, when I was watching the film and what we could get, we have nothing. And Miguel did a lot of special effects in post-production, even for the sex scene, because he was trying to get a couple with an alternative sex life, but he decided to use sexual toys and special effects, and what he did was amazing. I'm very happy with the film. Yeah.
I got that was funny. And Lynn, so since we have talked about like the censorship of Cuba and how you guys are relentlessly fighting against it, and you obviously told how you grew up in the before Cuban Revolution happened and how the society changed after the Soviet Russia the Soviet Union fell. How life is like in Cuba, because as Indians we live in like on the different part of the world, and very little of Cuban life is known outside of Cuba, right? So, how is a Cuban lifestyle, and how much political bureaucracy that we talk about on Cuba, how much it affects people's lives? Is the government bureaucratic on a official level, or is it something that affects Cuban way of living? Because the amount of like even for a small thing like an international interview, the amount of obstacles that we are facing, everything is blocked. I'd really like to know how much this government affects Cuban life.
Being Cuban means that you are a Cuban who lives in Cuba. This means that you have no rights to have a credit card, for example, because Cuba doesn't allow to be part of the financial funds, international funds, and we are not connected with the rest of the banks. It's just the Cuban bank. And this is something very hard because as a filmmakers, we need to travel to do the exhibition of our films. So we always depend on our friends or the people on charge in the film festivals, because there are a lot of cities where you need a credit card to take the subway, for example. And yes, it's complicated. It's been complicated, this situation. That's why we don't have access to Netflix or Amazon. I have friends who can do that, but they have to do a lot of things to get the access these services. And the way that information is being circulated is through the package. It's 1 terabyte of information. The moment when you are visiting your a friend, you got your pen drive or your hard drive, and you can have the information. Of course, we can watch films from India, from all over the world. Also at the television, at the Cuban television, if the content of the films are not disagree with what the government is expecting for, it's okay. You can watch films from all over the world. Yeah.
So, Lynn, obviously, you wear many hats. You are a very like a multifaceted person. You do stage acting. You love acting in stage. You have told me this many times before. You have done cinema. You are a writer. You are a cinematographer. You are a photographer, and you are a model. So you wear many hats. So, what do you think you defines you as an artist, especially on a Cuban cultural context? What do you think that defines you as an artist? Is it your stage acting? Is it your film acting on movies like Blue Heart that makes a political commentary, or is it something else? Your writing, maybe even your photography as well. So what do you think, like, what cultural expression defines you the most?
I became censor in 2018 because of my political opinions at the social medias. And I remember that at that time I was focused on writing because I was writing for the Cuban independent medias since 2015. I had a column in Havana Times. And then I realized that what I was looking for was to get the control of my creations, because I felt myself more open writing. And it's ironically because it's supposed that if you are actor, you are more open, but it's not necessary, because as an actor you have the mask of the character. You're not talking about you. And this is easier because you can be behind the mask. And even when you don't risk too much as an actor. It's just to be good. But when you have the control of the creation, you are risking everything. And that's why this appealing me more. And about the new projects, Miguel is been working the new screenplay of the new film. It's a feature film, and I cannot talk too much, but yeah, we began the new film, yeah, already.
Thank you, Lynn. But now, since you are criticizing Cuba so much, let's discuss the upsides of Cuba. Cuba is a beautiful country. It's what I should say. It's a combination of islands, and it's an island nation. It's a very beautiful place. And so, let's talk about Cuban culture. As an Indian, like, how will you introduce me to Cuban culture, to Cuban cinema? Because again, very little of it comes out of Cuba. Even for someone like me, who is who loves world cinema, I know very little about Cuban cinema because very little of it comes out of it. So talk about like the Cuban cinema, what Cuban movies that we as Indians, we as movie lovers should watch, and Cuba as a country. How is like Cuba as a country, Cuban culture, Cuban way of life, anything like the good stuff about Cuba, the good stuff about Cuban culture, because you are the first Cuban that I am interacting, and I can totally see that you guys are very culturally inclined. So let's talk about Cuban cinema, the good side of Cuban cinema. What movies that you would like people like me to watch, and what is life like in Cuba? What is like a Cuban way of living culturally and daily life wise?
I love the films from the 1960s in Cuba. The films by Fausto Canel, Tomás Gutiérrez Alea. I love from the 1990s, I love Madagascar by Fernando Perez. I'm also very appealing with the films he made in the year 2000s, Sweet Havana, for example, also by Fernando Perez, and Memories of Overdevelopment by Miguel Coyula. The references are very close, but I met him during the premiere of this film in Havana, and I love the film. It's the sequel of Memories of Underdevelopment by Tomás Gutiérrez Alea from 1968, and it's based on the same author, Edmundo Desnoes. He wrote Memories of Underdevelopment and also Memories of Overdevelopment, and I love both films very much. And in musicians, I love Ernesto Lecuona. Is a classical musician. He's very good. And for the popular music, I love Habana Abierta. It's from my generation. I love their music. And what you cannot miss is Porno para Ricardo. This is the best band, punk rock band ever in Cuba. It's on YouTube. You can find very easy. Porno para Ricardo. It's very good and very critical and frontal. They also became censor. The leader of the band, Gorky Aguila, was in jail for 2 years, and it was they had a lot of struggle with the Cuban authorities. A ver, let me see. Well, yeah, I think, I answered your question. I have an image of myself walking through Infanta. Infanta is a big street from Centro Havana Center. And then suddenly the wall, the Malecón Habanero. We used to call Malecón of this wall surrounding the city. And I have this always this obsession, because in Havana often you forget that you are in an island because it's a big city. And in the moment when I see the Malecón, the wall, something changed, and I can feel this isolation and nostalgia in a way. So, and this is something that it's in the films from the 1960s, that it was this magical time for the cinema all over the world. And there are too many directors that they can capture this isolation feeling, not just with the island, but with the Cuban Revolution or with the communism in this side of the world. Because still we are completely alone, and nobody can understand why. It's what it is, but this is the most powerful feeling I can express in images, I mean.
I can totally see how much you love your country, how deeply you are a Cuban, and that is the beauty of living a nation like Cuban, like for that matter, any country in the world, that you're so deeply rooted in that country, so deeply rooted in that culture, and even after all this bureaucracy, and again, this interview was a nightmare to shoot. Thank you, Lynn, so much for being such a good sport and arranging the interview that we are doing in such a way. Thank you so much. We literally, it's once you guys will see the interview, it would be a composition of voice emails after we have failed trying a million other things. It was literally the last resort. Thank you so much, Lynn, and I can totally see how much you love your country, how much your passion, how the Cuban culture is how much ingrained in you. That was beautiful. Hopefully the bureaucracy, the censorship, it will end in Cuba. Hopefully everything becomes normal, and it would not be, if I have you again on the interview, it would not be as difficult as it was this time.
Again, thank you so much for the invitation and being so patient with all these problems we had with the internet access. And it's good to talk about the way we work in Cuba, about Cuban cinema, especially because we are in different cultures and different areas, geographical areas. And it's very nice to realize that we can connect with other audience like you, Diva Jyoti. Thank you.
And last but not the least, Lynn, I want to say to you that you have been amazing the way we did the interview. We are not introduced not long ago, maybe a couple of months back. It's my absolutely pleasure knowing you and your partner Miguel. You guys are such creative people. The way you keep the independent cinema alive, the voice of independent cinema alive in Cuba, defining censorship, doing bold, be it the nude scenes, be it the political commentary, doing something that is a statement against Cuban government, against Cuban censorship, and absolutely yes, you guys have. We often say solidarity like it's a good Twitter friendly term, but yes, you have an Indian guy who is absolutely part of your struggle. Obviously, I live like, I don't know, maybe 50,000 kilometers away from YouTube, but absolutely, we guys are together in this, and I'll say this on air: fuck Cuban censorship, and hopefully, the people of Cuba and the bureaucracy ends. And thank you, Lynn, so much for doing this. Thank you so much for being such a great sport, for sharing your insights, for sharing your creativity, your artistic outlook on life. You are such a talented person. You wear many hats as an artist, and thank you so much for doing this. This means a lot to me, and it was a pleasure knowing this side of the world. You have been a voice for a part of the world that doesn't get heard very often. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining this interview.
You surprised me. No, it's thanks for the gesture because for the solidarity. No, but you made me think that I have something important to say before the ending of the interview. It's that in Cuba we have more than 1,000 political prisoners since medicines, because it was in the middle of the pandemic, and also freedom. And I think it's a very nice gesture. Thank you. Thanks for your solidarity again.